Here we go. Andy.
Welcome to the final whistle on 810WHB.com and 102.9 FM ESPN Radio. Nate Bucati along with Andy Edwards. As we are in the members club, it's always a festive atmosphere in here, Andy, but I think it's the atmosphere today of one of those matches where your team played really well, but should have come away with 3 points. So a 0-0 draw, even if it's against one of the best teams in MLS, doesn't feel like it was enough for Sporting Kansas City here today.
Yeah, I think before the game, if you would have offered all these fans a chance at a point against Real Salt Lake, a team that we think at the end of the season will definitely be up there at the top of the Western Conference, the top of Major League Soccer, they probably would have said, okay, I would accept that. I wouldn't be exactly happy with it, but I would accept it. But after watching the 90 minutes tonight, as we call the game here on the station, a disappointing result. I think the fact that they had by far the two best scoring opportunities of the night, not able to put either one of them away, and everything else that they did for the other 89 minutes of the game, all that possession, all that passing, all those shots, was really for naught, and it didn't matter, it didn't count for anything.
It's one of the things that can really be frustrating about the sport of soccer sometimes is so many great plays that can end in no result. And that's one of the things that a lot of people say is the magical thing about soccer is that it takes so much to go into a goal. And Sporting Kansas City had everything basically today except the final product. And if you had told me coming into this match that Sporting Kansas City would dominate the way that they had in this match, I would have been surprised. I expected more of an evenly matched soccer game here today. That wasn't the case, but in the end, the scoreline looks like it was a game that was 50-50.
Yeah, we're going to get the thoughts of manager Peter Vermes, Sporting Kansas City manager, right now in his post-game press conference.
Game plan, the way the guys executed, it was tremendous. The only thing we were missing was the goal. We created great opportunities. Dom had the breakaway early on. We had in and around their box, I don't know how many times in the first half. Second half as well, I think we had 20 shots to 5. Tremendous performance by the guys. I thought we were very difficult to play against defensively. And, the only thing I can say is that we just didn't score. Outside of that, it was a great performance. We play like that on a regular basis. We're going to win a lot of games.
Questions, and please use the microphone to ask.
Peter, you mentioned the shots and the possession. Would you say that this is the best performance for you guys all year?
It was a good one. I thought we were really good here at home when we played Cruz Azul. I thought we had a great game that day, and the guys were really locked in. I'd say today, it was very similar to that type of performance. The only difference is we didn't get the one we needed. But yeah, very very good all around. And I thought some individuals were excellent. I thought Matt Beasler today was just absolutely top class when it came to being on the ball, coming out of the back. I thought he was big time. I thought Chance didn't really miss a step coming back and having been out for quite some time. Great engine on Seth to get up and down. I could go on and on. I thought Crony did a great job, especially on some crucial set piece situations, some balls knocked into the box. I thought all around the team was excellent.
Peter, first time all season you've had your regular back line back there. How do you think the group played together?
Yeah, I thought it was good. I mean, there was a few things that we need to just go back and rehearse a little bit, just because they haven't been together, because different guys have been away or out because of injury. But I thought they were good, and like I said, the thing probably I'm most pleased with is the fact that we had a game plan going into this game, and I thought that they executed extremely well, and there was a patience within the way that we played, and most of the game I don't think Salt Lake had a solution to some certain things that were going on in the game.
DeVal makes his debut tonight. What did you think of his play?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Antonio's debut,
Yeah,
what did you think?
I thought when he came on, he was excellent with the ball. He found a great ball to Colin on top of the box. I think Colin was extremely surprised when he got it. He's not used to getting the ball like that on top of the box. He's usually clearing it, not trying to go to goal. And then he played in a couple other guys. He played one little 1-2 with Chance, put him in behind the defense. He's a guy that can open up a defense really, really well from that place. He's good on the ball. He keeps possession. He's got great service. So very good addition, and I thought he was good. I really do.
And then I know it was on the other side of the field, but Uri's red card. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I haven't seen the replay yet, so I'll have to take a look at it, and we'll see from there. But I thought we did a good job to keep the game organized, and we actually got forward quite a few times, and within that 10-minute span or whatever it was, and created some really good actions to goal. Still being a man down, and I thought we were disciplined, and again, not easy to do that, especially when you're at home and you still want to try to go for the win.
Coach, 2 weeks ago against San Jose, you went down one flank a lot, and tonight with your, mentioned the starting back line, looked like you used both sides of the field really well. Did you feel like that, in your opinion, that happened?
Yeah, I thought that we were excellent in the wide channels. I thought both sides did a great job. I thought we found a lot of space there, a lot of 2v1 situations that created a lot of good service into the box. The good thing, too, is that after a while, it wasn't just us trying to whack the ball in the box. We actually, were playing the ball and building up still in the wide channel, getting into the box, which was great. And like I said, excellent actions to goal. Just, hit the post. Dom had a great breakaway in the first half. Those are the things that we're missing.
You singled out Matt Beasler, someone who played really well, and obviously played well for the national team on Wednesday. With all the questions on the U.S. backline, he seems to be kind of the one lock. What do you think about his game translates so well to the international level?
Well, look, I think any team at a high level, including the way that we want to play here, you have to be able to play with the ball. When I talk about especially central defenders, I always talk about the first thing is, because first you have to be able to defend, right? I mean, we all know that, but the other side is with the ball. And if you want to be a team that's going to play, you have to have what's called a good entry ball. And he is so clean with that. I really think he's probably the best central defender in the league on the ball. And tonight he was top class.
Peter, it seems like every week last year we were talking about an opposing goalkeeper coming in here and having a fantastic performance, top-notch performance. No Nick Raimondo tonight, and yet they still get a great performance. Can you just talk about that?
Yeah, he had some great saves. I thought the one that Benny tattooed, he comes up with a tremendous save there. We were in and around their goal. Again, I thought that we could have done better with a couple situations. They did a good job to make sure they didn't get one in on them, but at the same time, I just think that we could have been a little cleaner at times. But we got to understand that teams are always going to bring their A game when they come to play us, and we got to be prepared for that. I think our guys are. Like I said, I thought we played well tonight. Just we missed that final goal.
Steve, any questions? Locker room's open.
Thanks.
So those are the comments of Peter Vermes after this match. If we play like this, we'll win a lot of games.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, and and obviously you're going to hear the disappointment from us and maybe some of the fans. He didn't come away with 3 points in this match. I found Peter to sound somewhat upbeat here, and I think that what he's maybe holding on to more than what we've talked about is the way this team played against a side as good as Real Salt Lake. I made the comment to you during the play-by-play portion of our broadcast that this was a much more one-sided affair in favor of Sporting Kansas City than the MLS Cup final was. If anything, as you said, you might have been able to make the argument that Real Salt Lake outplayed Sporting Kansas City in regulation during that match. There's nobody in the world that would make that case here today. Sporting Kansas City dominated this game against a team that is used to possessing the ball and making things difficult for you even when they're on the road.
Right. I think where Peter Vermes takes the optimism out of tonight's game, it's obviously it's from the performance. It's the way that they controlled this game against a team who themselves are very good at dictating the pace and the tempo of the game. And Sporting Kansas City, for 80 of the 90 minutes tonight, really in control of that aspect of the game. And so in terms of that, yes, a very good performance, and something that I think, as you look towards the whole of the season, is a very, very promising sign, not just an occurrence on the night. Also, in the context of a 34-game season, taking a point against this Real Salt Lake team that just 5 months ago was in the MLS Cup final here against Sporting Kansas City, a team we expect to be right up there at the top again. It's not a bad result in a vacuum. Now, when we talk about what it could have or should have been, that's when it becomes a little bit frustrating, a little bit disappointing for obviously for Peter Vermes. He's not happy with the fact that they drew tonight, but I think he's willing to accept that, knowing that there's going to be a lot of nights where if they play that game, they win 2-0, they win 3-0, 4-0. It's just about putting those chances away when they come up, because they don't, for all the shots that they take, they do not create a lot of great 8 or 9 out of 10 chances. There's a lot of 5 out of 10 shots being taken, really speculative, opportunistic times, and those don't always come off. And sometimes they do. Sometimes they all come off together, and you look better than you really are. Tonight it was a little bit of the opposite, where you play really well, but the final product is not quite there, and that maybe takes away just a little bit.
Sporting Kansas City had 2 chances by my count that are the type of, you ought to make a goal there 8 out of 9 times or 8 out of 10 times. The Dom Dwyer breakaway in the first half. And then when Dwyer got around the keeper, maybe it wasn't necessarily his chance. I mean, he put that one in a position where it hit the post from a very difficult angle. It was a great play, I thought, by Dwyer. But on that rebound, Zissou has a chance with the keeper out of net to place that somewhere in the back of the net, but he kicks it right at Nat Borchers, who was in the right spot. You give him credit for hustling back on the play and not ball watching. But at the same time, you've got to come away with a better result. You would think that Sal Zissou would say himself, he's got to find a way to place that into some space. There was enough space, and he was face up straight with the goal there.
Yeah, and I think also, talking about the entirety of the game, Sal Zissou had a nice game tonight.
Yes, he did.
His second consecutive, very good, very involved, dangerous game from Sal Zissou. And this is a player that came in the offseason without a lot of fanfare, not really heralded as a huge offseason acquisition. I thought he would, by the end of the season, look like a really good signing. I didn't think it would happen this quick, but he's involved in so much, and for him to come up with an opportunity like that, that would have been a great shot of confidence to Sal Zissou, as just something to show for what he's done in these last 2 games against Colorado and Salt Lake tonight. Unfortunate that he's not able to come up with a goal there and help his team to the 3 points. But again, more promising performances, not just on the team side of things where they really control the game, but a lot of great individual performances at the beginning of the season to be standout players, and Sal Zissou is definitely one of them.
Let's go ahead and pause for station identification. You're listening to The Final Whistle on 102.9 FM.
KCXL Liberty, K275BQ, Kansas City.
Nate Bukaty along with Andy Edwards. The Sporting Kansas City ends in a 0-0 draw against Real Salt Lake in a match that Sporting Kansas City really dominated almost in its entirety. There was one stretch at the end of the first half where Real Salt Lake had the run of play and was on the front foot. You could tell that Peter Vermes really got into his players at halftime by the way the Sporting Kansas City players responded. And the area of the game in which Sporting Kansas City were most dominant and dangerous was at the very start of the second half. Not that they didn't basically dominate the run of play from start to finish today, but that start of the second half, Sporting Kansas City were dynamic. They were going forward. They were breaking up play in midfield and turning it into chances. They were getting the ball into dangerous positions inside the penalty area, but not able to convert on any goals at that time. And that might have been the one stretch of the game where if Sporting Kansas City were to take control of this game, get a goal, and put themselves in position to come away with 3 points, a goal should have come at that time, but they couldn't come up with it. Then, of course, there was a straight red card on Uri Rozelle in the 83rd minute. At that point, Sporting Kansas City was just trying to make sure they closed out the game without giving up too much of an opportunity. If you'd like to call to weigh in on this show, you can give us a call at 913-491-8255. Once again, that's 913-491-8255. Nate Bukaty and Andy Edwards here to break this game down for you.
And take some pictures.
And take pictures. I mean, look, you're a very famous man. You're in demand. People want to come meet Andy Edwards. If you come to the Members Club right now, he's actually selling autographs for only $5 a piece, which is a discounted rate for Andy Edwards, which I think is impressive. One of the other comments that was made by Peter Vermes in the news conference that we just heard that stood out to me, because it was unsolicited, was Matt Besler was absolutely big time. He called him top class here today. And Besler's performance might have been one of those ones that went unnoticed a little bit because it didn't seem like the defense was ever under much pressure. But part of that was because every time Real Salt Lake came forward, Besler and Aurelian Collin were there to clean it up. And Besler just so calm on the ball when he won it back for Sporting Kansas City, always playing Sporting Kansas City back into an advantageous situation.
Well, here's Matt Besler's advanced statistical line here tonight. 2 interceptions, 6 clearances attempted, 6 effective clearances, 3 offsides won as well, and so he's definitely, I think, the standout player as far as the intricate stats of the game go. But, that's to be expected from Matt Besler at this point. When he has a really solid, borderline great game like tonight, you don't really notice it anymore because he's done that game in and game out now, going on 24 or 30, 36 months back to 2011. There's a reason that he is in the position where he is, where he's the only certainty on the back line for the U.S. national team heading into this World Cup. There's questions all else on the back line, but he's the one constant, he's the one stable member back there, and it's very nice to see a member of the national team heading into a World Cup not only perform well for the national team when he goes into national team camp, but also playing for his club team week in and week out. There's no wavering, there's no up and down in Matt Besler's performance. It's just consistent, the same thing every single week.
We got to see that back line intact today with Sinovic and Chance Myers both back in and healthy as well. We've got our first caller of the night at 913-491-8255. Joe is on the line with us. Good evening, Joe. How are you?
I'm doing good, guys. How are you?
Doing wonderful. What's on your mind?
I just want to talk about RSL strategy. It didn't look like the same team that beat Toronto 3-0. And I was wondering, do you think, were they coming in just kind of sit and wait the counter, or do you think we was dominated a lot more, or do you think it was the back line? That was a big difference.
Andy, what do you think?
Well, I think it's two very, very different opponents. First of all, between Toronto FC and Sporting Kansas City, the Real Salt Lake have faced in the last 2 weeks. Toronto FC playing the 4-4-2, while Michael Bradley oftentimes does the work of 2 men in the midfield. That's a huge numerical advantage in the midfield, playing that diamond as they do. Really 4-on-2 in the center of midfield in that game last week at Rio Tinto Stadium as well. That's a huge advantage for Real Salt Lake. Teams so oftentimes come here to Sporting Park, play so differently than they do at home as well. And also, Sporting Kansas City, their midfield tonight was fantastic. Before Yuri Rosell picked up his red card in the 83rd minute, he was absolutely bossing this game. I mean, his numbers, his passing numbers, 66 completed passes at 88%. Okay, and this is not Yuri Rosell playing 2-yard balls and playing backwards balls. He attempted 18 long balls tonight. He connected on 16 of those. So everything Yuri Rosell did there in that midfield, he was switching play from one side to the other, from the middle all the way up top. The midfield, the battle tonight, Kyle Beckerman was not dangerous all night until, was it stoppage time when Real Salt Lake had that little flurry of 3 opportunities, 3 through balls that the back line was able to take care of. Javier Morales, not dangerous all night. Yuri Rosell, a big part of that. Benny Feilhaber as well, getting back there in that midfield and really putting in a full shift, not just looking to get forward and create and score himself. So just the midfield, and that's how you dictate the tempo of a game. If you can make that game fast in the midfield, then you really make them chase. And if you pin them back, when they're countering 80 yards from goal, if that's where they're winning the ball. And it's just so much more difficult. Last week they turned Toronto over inside their own half time and time again, and it's one ball behind the back line, one-on-one with the goalkeeper, and it's in the back of the net.
I think it's a fantastic question brought up by the caller, Joe. And once again, the phone number 913-491-8255. As I watched this game, I did not see a Real Salt Lake team that came in here thinking to themselves, we're going to sit back and soak up pressure and try to hit Sporting Kansas City on the counter. If anything, I think the teams that do that are more dangerous against Sporting Kansas City than the team we saw here today. I just saw a Real Salt Lake team that could not maintain possession of the ball because the pressure by Sporting Kansas City's forwards, defenders, and midfielders was overwhelming, which is something you don't expect to see. I think that's why it's a great question by Joe, because, look, we're used to seeing Real Salt Lake maintain possession. We're used to seeing them play under composure, and even when teams try to close them down and maintain high pressure, they deal with that pressure and they maintain possession. Every time they look to try to build something, or almost every time they look to try to build something tonight, Sporting Kansas City players were there to break it up. And you referenced Benny Feilhaber in the midfield as well. Going end line to end line. This is a player who, as we talked about in the pregame, has really reinvented himself in his late 20s because of maybe the prodding, the dragging by his, kicking and screaming by Peter Vermes, whatever it is. He has done that, and we said, look, I think this is a guy that got a snub from the U.S. men's national team by not getting the call to Phoenix, because I don't believe there's a better player in terms of what kind of form he's in right now in MLS, maybe outside of Michael Bradley. And we said, well, you know what, it'll be interesting to see how he does against that diamond formation today, against a couple of guys like Rosales and Beckerman. And he was up to the challenge, just like everybody else for Sporting Kansas City was today, even though they didn't come up with that final goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And Feilhaber not only involved doing the defensive work, but going forward as well. He had two great opportunities off of second balls coming out of the box, a couple of volleys, one that he put on target, great save by Jeff Attinella, and then another one that he put just wide a few minutes after that off of a corner kick. And so Benny Feilhaber is, you know, even if he's not putting the ball in the back of the net, even if he's not the one picking up the assist, he's involved in everything at the moment for Sporting Kansas City. And that's something that 12 months ago when he was starting his time here, you could not say that at all about Benny Feilhaber, not even for a 10-minute span, a 20-minute span, forget it. It was just not happening. And this is a completely different player. I know the reward, the potential reward at the end of the tunnel of playing in the World Cup is definitely something that's on his mind and that's driving him. I'll be curious to see it. You know, say he does make the World Cup team. Does it continue in the second half of the season once that payoff has really come? I know he obviously wants to win a second championship here with Sporting Kansas City, but he's just so good at the moment. And inversely, on the other side, you know, that midfield battle, Luis Gil, who is one of the brightest players in Major League Soccer. 55 minutes tonight. He completed 15 passes, 47%. So he misplaced more passes than he put right. And for a team like Real Salt Lake, whose possession and passing percentage is sky high, week in and week out, that's a couple of mind-blowing numbers for me, really.
Well, and it's a couple of things that might make people from Sporting Kansas City feel a little vindicated when it comes to that. First of all, for the fact that I believe that it was a snub for Benny Feilhaber at the expense of a future player in Luis Gil at that friendly on Wednesday. And Luis Gil, a guy that was drafted by Sporting Kansas City, said he would only sign with a couple of clubs on the West Coast, so they basically had no choice but to trade him to Real Salt Lake. So Sporting Kansas City might have said, well, you don't think it's so fun playing for us? Not so fun playing against us either, as it was here today, as he was under pressure the entire time he was out there, completely a non-factor in this match. But the final scoreline, 0-0, disappointing maybe for Sporting Kansas City, considering the way they played. Again, the phone number, 913-491-8255. Let's go next to our next caller, Taylor, who is on the line. Good evening, Taylor. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for taking my call. My question is, you guys were talking about the optimism in Peter Vermees' press conference after the game. And as a fan, I am optimistic for the team. I love the way we played today, but I've been saying this for the last 3 years at home. When are we going to get to a point where we're consistently winning at home and the fans will be expecting 3 points every time we left Sporting Park?
Well, Taylor, thank you very much for the phone call. Look, it is interesting that Sporting Kansas City was not better at home last year as MLS Cup champs. It's interesting that they were so good on the road last year. Early indications are we're going to see more of that this year because this team just went and scored 3 goals at Colorado, and then they can't come up with a single goal here. Now, maybe part of that is the way teams play Sporting Kansas City when they come to this park. I don't know that I have a good explanation for it, Andy. And sure, it's frustrating, but at the same time, how can you argue with the overall results for the last 3 years of this franchise?
Yeah, I definitely get that frustration from Taylor. And then, you know, of the 19,000-some fans that were here tonight, I bet there's probably 19,000-some fans that are frustrated with that same aspect of this team. You know, the fact of the matter is teams play completely different when they come here to Sporting Park when they're on the road. You know, teams, when you're the home team, you have to drive the game. You have to be the aggressors, and you have to really try and put your opposition on the back foot. And when teams do that to Sporting Kansas City, when Sporting are on the road, the amount of space that opens up at that point. Look at the goals scored last week. 2 of the 3 off of the counterattack. Oh, 3 of 3. Actually, if you think back deep into the play, off the counterattack. That's not, you know, you don't see Sporting Kansas City getting to counter when they're at home because teams are sitting so deep defensively with so many numbers. It's tough to break down. I don't care whether you've got a guy, you know, you've got Benny Feilhaber, you've got Graham Zusi, you've got them in the team together. If there's 9-10 guys back behind the ball, it is tough not only to find the final pass, but just to find room to operate because there's so many defenders back there. And I know it's frustrating. We've had this call literally dozens and dozens and dozens of times over the last 2 years, and you know it's the same thing. It's the same thing, and you know there's no quick fix for it either. There's nothing that Peter Vermes is going to do in training this week, or he's going to say to the players that's going to flip that switch, and it's suddenly not going to be an issue. It's just going to take Sporting Kansas City putting together a run of performances, taking it upon themselves. Win chances like Dom Dwyer had tonight, like Graham Zusi had tonight. When those come, you have to take advantage of them in games like this, because teams give you so few real opportunities, and when you don't put them away, you completely waste them.
You know what I find interesting about this match, and maybe what adds to the frustration of it, is I feel like they did find that space today. And as Peter Vermes said, this wasn't just a case. I mean, I think we've had times in the past where some of the frustration is it seems that Sporting Kansas City run out of ideas when the other team packs it in, and they just start to bring it down wide and whip crosses into the box, just hoping somebody can get on the end of it. And as Peter Vermes pointed out, and I thought it was a very good point, that's not what they did, especially in the second half here today. How many times do we say great link-up play from Graham Zusi and Sesanovic, working down that left flank, and intricate passes working their way into the box, like the shot that Graham Zusi had that he sprayed wide in the second half. We even saw that on the right side between Chance Myers and Sal Zizzo from time to time. So I felt today they were finding that space. Real Salt Lake was not playing the type of game where they just packed everything in. They just couldn't find the final product in that one, and that's maybe what makes this one a little bit more frustrating to me. I guess in some ways, I don't know, it's both ways. In some ways more frustrating because they didn't get the final product, but in some ways more encouraging because this wasn't just we're out of ideas, let's just whip balls into the box and hope somebody can get on the end of it.
Again, that kind of problem, if you will, against a team like Real Salt Lake, not a huge deal. That kind of problem against a team like, say the Chicago Fire or, Chivas USA, even though they're improved this year, then you're more worried. I think you're more upset. You're a little bit more frustrated, and I think you have a better right to be. But again, Real Salt Lake they're just such a good for every time we've said Sporting Kansas City are just so good and so consistent. You can say it each and every time about Real Salt Lake as well. So it's just two such evenly matched teams, and the couple of moments in the game that decided the final result just didn't go Sporting's way.
And you have to give a tip of the cap to Antonelli, who was on point. Had to get called into duty because Raimondo apparently suffered a knock in the friendly against Mexico, and he was fantastic tonight. And Nat Borchers was pretty much everywhere he needed to be most of the night as well.
Yeah, happens a lot against Kansas City.
Once again, 913-491-8255 is the phone number, 913-491-8255. We will take a break, come back with more analysis. Sporting Kansas City and Real Salt Lake in a 0-0 draw here at Sporting Park tonight. Frustrating for the fans here as Sporting Kansas City dominated the run of play but could not come up with the goal to come away with the 3 points. Back after this on the final whistle.
So, 1 million lawyers, 1,000 plumbers, and 6,000 rabbis walk into a bar. One of the lawyers says to the bartender, wow.
What time are we looking to?
Okay. YP, the new way to do. Search results may vary.
The middle class in America
How long
is
is this
shrinking
break?
at an alarming rate. Working people maintain good
3
jobs,
minutes and
good
30
pay,
seconds.
good benefits.
Okay,
is
thanks.
despicable.
Is that
Do you
fine?
understand what right to work is? Go to protectmofamilies.com for more information. Then contact your legislator and let them know right to work is wrong for Missouri. Protectmofamilies.com. This message is sponsored by Teamsters Local 541, Ron Johnson, Business Manager.
For all the games, great food, and live music every weekend, there's only one spot in the Northland, the Landing at 152 and 291 in Liberty. It's Doug Stewart from the program, and the Landing's my spot because I can see every game, from the Tigers to my Cardinals, because they have every package from baseball to the UFC, even rugby. When the game's over, the Landing's also the home for the best bands in Kansas City all weekend long, plus poker and trivia during the week. All that in a menu that goes well beyond bar food, served late by the best waitresses in town. It's The Landing, 291 and 152, my spot in Liberty.
44 years in business and a AAA rating with the Better Business Bureau. Hi, this is Keith Blay, and that is our record at Mr. Remodeler.
Right.
The secret? Don't leave unhappy customers. How do we do that? Well, we try to make the remodeling process as painless as we can. On the first visit, for your peace of mind, we provide workman's compensation and liability insurance, our written warranty, and references. To ensure you get what you pay for, we provide detailed estimates, contracts, and drawings. So projects start smoothly and don't drag on. They're scheduled and organized ahead of time. Our carpenters are prompt, and problems are dealt with quickly until the job is done. Which brings me to the most important part, and that's the team at Mr. Remodeler. Yes, they're knowledgeable and experienced professionals like you would expect, but they are also the kind of people you will enjoy having in your home. Make your life a little easier by calling Mr. Remodeler for your next remodeling project. Missouri 453-3049, Kansas 362-7166, or online at MrRemodeler.com. Thanks.
What makes an expert?
The difference between acceptable vision and great vision is the expertise of the LASIK surgeon. There's a huge difference between having the latest technology and knowing how to use it. Many important variables make for a successful LASIK surgery. The way a person's eyes heal, their expectations, and their lifestyle are all factors. The answer to these variables is achieved by extensive training and experience. At Discover Vision, we employ the latest technologies and procedures, but we rely on the expertise of our doctors to get our patients great results. I'm Dr. John Downey. I not only specialize in surgery at Discover Vision,
Childish as
I've
hell.
had LASIK myself.
No interest payment plans for 24 months. Visit discovervision.com today to schedule your
10
free
seconds.
LASIK exam or call 816-283-EYES. Discover Vision Centers, leaders in eye care, experts in LASIK surgery.
Final Whistle continues on FM 102.9 and streaming online at 810WHB.com and on the Sports Radio 810 app. Nate Bucati along with Andy Edwards, and a match that ends in a 0-0 draw might seem like a boring match. There were certainly some fireworks on the pitch tonight, and some of those spilling over into Twitter slap fights between some of the players as well. Nick Raimondo, who did not play.
By the way, slap fights is a great characterization of what's going on here.
You want to go ahead and read some of this back and
Have
forth
at it.
between Nick Raimondo and Dom Dwyer at Nick Raimondo, who tweets, before running his mouth, this young forward should concentrate on his team and finishing first. Now, he did not link Dom Dwyer to that, but Dwyer did see that. Of course, Dom
They got
Dwyer
100 retweets in a half an hour, so.
Dom Dwyer retweeted him and posted his quote, which was on the post game with you last week after the Colorado game about Real Salt Lake. He said, "I hate them very much." He said, "Yeah, really running my mouth, huh? You really are behind the times. We missed you, though. Would have been 3-0. So implying that had Raimondo been between the pipes for Real Salt Lake, Sporting Kansas City would have converted on at least 3 of those chances. Raimondo responded, "Just not sure why you hate us. It was Cruz Azul that embarrassed you, not us. If anything, be mad at Jeff Antonella and the post." Of course, Dom Dwyer putting one off the post in the second half, and Antonella with a save in the first half. Dwyer responded then, "Yes, they did embarrass us, but the next day at training I got my ring sized and felt better. How did you guys do in the Champions League?" So that is the back and forth between Nick Raimondo and Dom Dwyer at this point, which is good entertainment.
I've had similar conversations with my younger brother and sister after we get in playing a video game, and one of us wins, one of us loses, and somebody's not happy.
So what do you think? Is this good? Is this one of those things that, hey, good for the league, get a little drama, get some bad blood going, or do they try to the Sporting Kansas City brass encourage their players to be on social media, be out there? I think it's kind of fun. And by the way, people enjoying the national championship game here at the members club as well right now. But what do you think? Good for the sport, bad look for the team. Does it matter?
No,
just have some fun here.
It's not a bad look. It's a couple guys, having a couple jokes. Nick Raimondo's tweeting this stuff and he's laughing to himself. Dom Dwyer's responding, he's laughing to himself. If these two guys were to see each other in the hallway right now, it's not going to come to blows. They're going to laugh about it and blah blah blah, banter back and forth, and have a laugh at it again, and that's it. I mean, it's fun. It's something that people can. It's an extension of the game, and it's something that the fans can really I think a lot of these kind of conversations, and not silly like that one, but happens a lot more than I think people realize. And so for it to play out on Twitter, it's just people seeing it for one of the first times, and it's fun, it's funny, it's kind of cute, I guess, and that's that.
Is it a bad thing for the MLS that these two teams only face each other once in regular season play?
Oh yeah. I mean, you can make a case. Sporting Kansas City, best team in the Eastern Conference. You can make a case, Real Salt Lake, best team in the Western Conference. You can make that case for the last 2 or 3 years as well. And for 2013 to have only played once before you get to MLS Cup and only play once this year, yeah, sure. Anytime you can get two of your best teams lined up on the same field and really push that as a big primetime game, it's good for the league. It's a bit unfortunate that their one meeting this year, 0-0 draw on a weekend that was full of goals. There was a 4-4. There was a 2-2. There was another 2-2. There was a 2-0, a 2-0, a 4-1. And then the two teams that were in MLS Cup last year, 0-0.
Goals everywhere in the MLS
Yeah.
except for these. Well, maybe that tells you something about the importance of defense and when it comes to the postseason. I'm not sure. But, when it comes to the MLS, it seems there's a lot of times an effort to create these rivalries. Some of them come naturally because of geography. That doesn't really happen for Sporting Kansas City. I know there's been a push to try to make the Chicago Fire the rival of this team. Obviously, it's easy for Seattle and Portland to strike up a rivalry. Their two fans can get to one another's stadiums without much of a problem. But sometimes, and I think with the unbalanced schedule, there's sometimes an effort to try to do that, where you're going to play these teams more often, so these teams will be the teams that you form a rivalry with. And we saw some nice antics between Montreal and Sporting Kansas City last year and those types of things. I think sometimes rivalries have to come organically. And we've seen a good rivalry from Real Salt Lake and Sporting Kansas City because of the results on the pitch and because they don't like each other very much. And I'll give Nick Raimondo one answer. But hey, part of the reason that they don't like you very much is because of your snooty attitude about the way we play soccer in Kansas City. I think that's part of the reason. When you have people in your front office and even some of your players sometimes basically disrespecting the style of play that Sporting Kansas City come with, intimating that they don't play real soccer in Kansas City. We play the real, beautiful version of the game in Salt Lake, which, by the way, was completely shot out of the water, in my opinion, today, because Sporting Kansas City was the more technical team here today as well.
Yeah, actually, last week after we had Dom on the postgame show, we had Benny Feilhaber as well, and he said something to the point of, they fancy themselves as a possession-first team, blah, 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 and I don't know if we really buy into that. Well, the numbers tonight, at the end of the game, 57% possession for Sporting Kansas City, 43% for Real Salt Lake, 20 shots on goal for Sporting Kansas City, 5 for Real Salt Lake. The one thing I will grant them is they say Sporting Kansas City foul a lot, and they're just a bunch of brutes. 14 fouls for Sporting Kansas City tonight, only 6 for Real Salt Lake, and obviously the red card on Yuri Rosell. So, look, it's one game. If they were to play again next week, it could be completely flipped the other direction. These teams are both that good that they can turn the tide of a game that much.
And there's no doubt about it. 913-491-8255 is the phone number. 913-492-8255 if you'd like to call in and weigh in on this. But the fouls were there for Sporting Kansas City, including a red card that was called on Uri Rosell, one that you and I both felt was most likely warranted. It was not a two-footed challenge by Rosell, but the thing I had an issue with more than anything was I didn't see any reason for Rosell to go for that challenge in that situation. In the middle of the pitch, it was not a dangerous situation for Real Salt Lake. I don't really see any reason for Uri Rosell to go into that challenge in that situation. And that's a situation where Sporting Kansas City were completely on the front foot. They've been putting Real Salt Lake under pressure the entire second half. Who knows if they would have come away with that goal that had been eluding them for the first 83 minutes. But once that red card was issued to Rosell, you got the sense that, well, it's definitely not going to come now. And I just didn't see the need for Rosell to go into a challenge like that at that time. We're going to bring in Cal Williams, who, of course, does a fantastic job with the play-by-play on television for Sporting Kansas City. Cal, we're talking about that red card. What did you make of it with Uri Rosell in that situation?
I thought it was a little clumsy, and I think Uri will be the first to admit that. There was no need to make that sort of challenge in that particular area at that particular time. I think Rosell, as I said, will go back and look at that and wonder why he made it. The argument that myself and Diego, the debate that myself and Diego Gutierrez were having on the television call this evening was that, is it endangering the opponents? Yes. Were the studs raised? Yes. But is it worthy of a red card? There are far worse fouls that we've seen already this year in Major League Soccer and elsewhere in the English Premier League and La Liga that weren't given red cards for a similar foul. So again, you have to go back to the referee and what he sees, and if he thought the foot was raised high enough for it to cause damage to Devon Sandoval, then so be it. It's one of those things, and I think Rosell will be disappointed with himself.
I have no problem with that being a red card as long as every time that challenge is made, and it happens fairly frequently. As long as every time it's made, it's a red card for everybody across the board. And I know that's impossible to achieve perfection at, because you have X number of different referees, X number of different games and different angles and everything. But it needs to be a standard approach.
Well, that's what makes it difficult, isn't it? The fact that there are certain red cards that are automatic.
Yeah.
If he goes in with 2 feet there, he's got to give a red card. That was not a 2-foot challenge in that situation. As you said, studs raised. Sometimes it's almost like, well, I remember one time they asked him what you know, when legal debates about what is pornography. Well, you know it when you see it. What is a red card? Well, you know it when you see it. Do you really, though? Because in that situation, that might have been the proximity for the official, how close he was to the play, the violence of the collision at that time.
How well the player sells it.
You know, it's an initial reaction. I was a little surprised when I saw him reach to his red pocket. I was not stunned when he reached into his chest pocket for that.
Yeah, I think, like you said, it's one of those things that you have to just look and see what the referee saw, and if the referee felt it was a red card, well, there's nothing you can do about it. You know, we've seen so many times, not only in Major League Soccer, but in world football, Nate, we've seen so many times where people have gone in two-footed with the intent of damaging the opponent. I don't think there was any intent there this evening from Rosell. I just think it was a clumsy challenge. And, you know, it was soon after he lost the ball. He was running at full pace. There was plenty of momentum behind him. So, as I say, I don't think there was any intent from Rosell. He's not that kind of player. He's not that kind of person. I just think it was clumsy more than anything.
You know, and I saw a far more cynical challenge in my view in the first half. Now, I never saw a replay of it, so maybe it looked worse in my viewing of it than it really turned out to be, and it did not result in even a yellow card, and that was on Kyle Beckerman when he lost the ball to Benny Feilhaber. I believe it was actually Dom Dwyer. He lost the ball to Dom Dwyer in that first half, and I believe he was frustrated by that play, and he absolutely took down Dom Dwyer from behind and chopped him down, and that was not a yellow card at all. So for me, I don't know what you thought of that play, if that one even stood out to you or not. Advantage was played, but I fully expected the official, once play stopped, to go back and issue a yellow card to Beckerman. We didn't see it in that situation.
No, we didn't, did we? And let's be honest, we may get in a little trouble saying this, Nate, but I don't think the referee exactly shone himself in glory this evening. He wasn't particularly one of the best performing referees we've seen in Major League Soccer, but how many times have we done this post-game radio show and said exactly that?
Right.
So
too often in this league.
Look, I think it's, as Andy was briefly touching on a little earlier on, I think it depends on the consistency of the referee. As he was saying, if he's given the red card there to Uri Rosell for that challenge, well, why has the red card not come out for a similar challenge, what you were saying a little earlier on? And that's the thing, isn't it, is we want consistency as fans. We want consistency from the referees, and of course we want consistency from the players, but that's the thing, is if you're going to give a red card for that challenge, why is he not giving a red card a little earlier on, or perhaps a little later as well?
And in the end, we can spend a lot of time talking about it, but I don't even think Sporting Kansas City can sit here and blame anyone but themselves for not coming away with 3 points in this game. They dominated the run of play. They were beautiful in possession. They were beautiful in taking possession away from Real Salt Lake. They just couldn't come up with the final product tonight.
Well, there were some passes there that were, quite frankly, they wouldn't have looked out of place in an art gallery, and it was, you know, there was some simply fantastic stuff played this evening, but it seems to be one of the old tricks in the book, and a very typical Sporting KC way here, chaps, is that we pass the ball around very well. The final third looks very exciting, but again, chances aren't being converted. I don't necessarily think it's time to worry, because it's far too early in the season, and when you look at it from a positive point of view, look, the chances are being created, because let's be honest, 3 or 4 years ago those chances weren't being created, and as we all know, if you don't create chances you don't score goals. So plenty of positives to take from this performance, but let's be honest, we're all disappointed because the chances were there to win the game.
I think disappointed but not discouraged is the right word. In some ways encouraged by the play, because as you said, and we've seen many matches here where Sporting Kansas City would have a lot of possession, and Andy, I know you've talked about this, it's one thing to have possession. It's another thing to create opportunities. There's sometimes when you can have possession all match long, but you don't actually put something together that seems it will end in a final product. We did see that here today. We didn't see the final product, but we saw possession with a purpose. We saw possession with creating opportunities. And as Peter Vermes said, you play like that all season long, you're going to win a lot more games than you lose.
Well, and this goes back to a conversation that we had actually with you, Cal, before the game even started. We were just hanging out in the broadcast booth and chatting about MLS compared to teams from the Premier League, teams from La Liga, whatever. And, you said, well, Sporting Kansas City would beat Aston Villa. Because Aston Villa are horrible. You're an Aston Villa supporter.
That was as much a swipe at your own team as it was.
So you're allowed to say that.
Compliment to Sporting, I think.
Thank you for bringing that up, Andy.
And so, the way I look at it is, a team like Aston Villa against Premier League opposition, not so good. But if they're playing it against a team like Sporting Kansas City, if they have the chances, let's say Christian Benteke, one-on-one with the goalkeeper, like Dom Dwyer was against Jeff Attinella tonight. That ball's in the back of the net, and
right.
You know it. That's not about comparison to, your opponent. That's a simple one-on-one task on the soccer field. And that's still the difference for me between the quality of MLS and the quality of some top leagues is a chance like that hits the back of the net 9.9 out of 10 times in foreign leagues, in the top leagues, where in MLS, it's still not there. I mean, that's just that chance right there.
I'm agreeing with you, but also disagreeing because I've watched Christian Benteke a lot this year, and I'm not utterly convinced that he would put an opportunity like the one that Dwyer had this evening away. Maybe somebody like a Robin van Persie or.
I tried to pick somebody that's not at the top.
Right. Well, I think that the conversation we were having a little earlier.
Does Josie Altidore put that away right now?
In the current form he's in, no. And just going on to that sort of point, actually, I think there are a lot of teams in the English Premier League and La Liga, and again going back to the conversation we were having earlier on, chaps, about when we're judging Major League Soccer and comparing it to La Liga, the English Premier League, the Bundesliga, whatever. There are a lot of people that seem to compare Major League Soccer with Bayern Munich or with Arsenal or with Real Madrid, somebody like that. And honestly, I think if you were to put a team like Sporting KC and a team like Real Salt Lake, for example, I think if you were to put them in the middle pack against the teams like Aston Villa, like Fulham, towards the bottom end, I honestly believe that they would compete. And again, before I came here, lads, I did a lot of Championship and League One games for the BBC, and the standard is better in Major League Soccer. I think that the difference is, especially in the Championship, the division under the Premier League, is that there's no salary cap, so naturally the rosters are much larger. And we can debate this for as long as we want. I'm not sure how much airtime we have here, lads, but I know for a fact that if the salary cap continues to rise, it's only going to be beneficial for Major League Soccer. Not quite sure I agree with David Beckham in saying we want to get rid of the salary cap quite yet. I'm not sure we're quite there yet.
Of course he does.
But
he's got a lot of friends.
Yeah.
No, the salary cap has been a key component to the survival of Major League Soccer and to the success as well. But as long as it keeps getting bigger and bigger, the quality is only going to get better in MLS.
Yeah, I think the issue is not the salary cap, in my view. It's the size of the cap, and that needs to continue to grow so you can bring in better players and more better players, as you said, so that the depth is there. But let's go back to what Sporting Kansas City, where they are as a side right now, and I feel like in a disappointing result like this, I'm coming across as a bit of a Sporting Kansas City apologist, but I look at the way that they played in this match here today, and the two matches I've had the pleasure of calling on the radio broadcast so far this year have been this match against Real Salt Lake and against San Jose. Now, San Jose, a squad that has the best American goal scorer right now, I guess, in Wondolowski. Can we say that? I mean, he's one of the best anyway. He was a complete non-factor. He was taken out of that match. Sporting Kansas City completely stifled San Jose. Here today, against one of the best franchises in MLS, Real Salt Lake, they come into this match and they completely stifle Real Salt Lake. And another team, I don't feel like Saborio was even a factor for this match at all. And so while we can lament the fact that they only have 5 goals, and it's a point worth talking about, and it will be a concern, I suppose, going forward, we can tend to take for granted what this team does to take away what other teams have and how good, and especially considering there's been no consistency in terms of who's played along the back line. With a new keeper for this squad to look the way they have against some of the opposition they've played so far this season.
Yeah, look, I think you're absolutely spot on there, Nate, in terms of Alvaro Saborio. For most part of the game, look, he was little more than a spectator, wasn't he? So, yeah, look, the one thing which we're all agreeing with, and the one thing which I think there's a lot of focus on this team, is how good defensively they are. But at times, people want a little more than that, don't they? And at times, you need a little more than that. So, Dom Dwyer obviously scoring the goal against San Jose to beat them that evening, and then again scoring the winning goal against Colorado Rapids. So we know there's goal scorers in this team. Dom Dwyer did it with Orlando City, and I know it's at a lower level in a minor league. I understand that. But you're telling me a guy who scores, I think it was 22 goals overall in Orlando last year, you're telling me that he's not a goal scorer. Look, there are goals in this team. There are chances that have clearly been created, but I think the one thing now, I think we'd all agree in saying here, Sporting have reached a certain level. They've won MLS Cup, they're the champions, we understand that. They've reached a certain level. What is the next step for Sporting KC? Where do they go from here? Is it another significant investment on the pitch, off the pitch? Where do they go from here?
Well, the only thing more difficult than getting to the top is staying on the top.
Absolutely.
And now that Sporting Kansas City have gotten there, you know, look, some people are going to be happy with being there and want to just stay there. Some people will want to continue to push on and find the next level. We don't exactly know what that is at the moment because they've won an Open Cup, they won an MLS Cup back-to-back years. Where do you go?
Here's the difficult thing about this in this league. Somebody asked me this earlier today, asking me what's going on with Sporting and are they as good as they were last year? And I said I think there's actually a very good chance they're better than they were last year. But here's the problem: it's a moving target in the MLS. Because this league is improving at a rate that's different than every other league on planet Earth. Now, part of that's because they're starting from so far back, but in such a short period of time, I mean, you know, all of a sudden you drop players like Defoe and Bradley into your conference, you can be as good as you were last year, and that might not be good enough to win the league this year. I mean, the league just continues. You know, Dempsey's in the league. Every time they continue to add more good players. So, in some ways, the next step is maintaining your place in the league, if that makes any sense, because maintaining your place in this league is actually taking two big steps forward, most likely.
It's ever-changing, isn't it, this league? And this is why we love it, because it's constantly growing, and just because it continues to grow doesn't necessarily mean it's small either as well. It's, what are we in, 19 years now of Major League Soccer, and look, for the growth that this league has made in that stage, and particularly over the last 5 years, I mean, you boys can tell me more than most, especially over the last 4 years since the World Cup as well. It's taken a massive, massive leap in the right direction. And like you mentioned, Nate, those names, Michael Bradley, Jermaine Defoe, and who else? Clint Dempsey, all these players that are coming over into Major League Soccer, it's only a good thing for the league. And you mentioned there about the chap asking you, you know, how good are Sporting going to be? Are they going to be better? And yes, you're right, that they quite frankly are going to be better this year. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go and win the league, because almost every team in Major League Soccer will say, we're going to be better than next year. And when you look at someone like Seattle Sounders, who have made significant investment in their roster, Toronto FC as well, plus there are so many other sides in the Eastern Conference, in Sporting's conference, that have made smart trades and smart signings, it's going to be a difficult task, Andy.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, you can go out and spend a ton of money and bring in these big-name players and still not, you know, help your team any. You know, if you don't find the right player that fits the system, and that's one of the things that Sporting Kansas City have preached. And I think, like, and we talked about earlier, during the preseason, during the offseason, who would have thought that Sal Zizzo would be a player that would come in and have an impact on a team like, you know, what, we're 5 games into the regular season, and he's got two assists last week, and he played very well again tonight, and he's looking like a great signing. And for the value that you get, considering the fact we still have the salary cap and all that, you know, Sporting Kansas City, I don't think they're ever going to be the biggest spenders of the teams in the league, because New York's always going to spend, LA's going to spend, Seattle, we now know, is going to spend, Toronto's got Tim Lewicki. It's just...
And going back to the point you were making earlier on, Nate, as well, only in this league would that happen. Sal Zizzo couldn't get a game for Portland Timbers over the last few years, yet he comes into the current MLS champions, is starting, has got a couple of assists as well. For example, let me think of an example here in the English Premier League. Steve Sidwell, playing for Fulham, couldn't go to Arsenal next season and be a fully fledged starter and have the impact, the early impact that Sal Zizzo has. And this is why Major League Soccer is the way it is, and this is why we love it so much, because it's so unpredictable. Who knows where this Sporting KC side are going to be in the next 6 months? I would be stunned if they're not involved in the playoffs. I think they will be involved in the playoffs because, for me, despite the investment Toronto FC has still made, Sporting is still the best side in the Eastern Conference. But as I said, this is why we love Major League Soccer.
Well, and this is why Real Salt Lake and Sporting Kansas City are who they are, because they both take players that can't get games on other teams, and then they all of a sudden, Seth Sinovic was a guy that was going to be left on the scrap heap at New England, and now he's
the best left back in MLS.
He hands down is, and he's one of the most consistent players in the entire league. And you get Real Salt Lake turns certain players that can't get on the pitch for a bad Toronto side, and next thing you know, they're scoring goals. So these two teams have reached that point now where when they acquire a player, even if it's an eyebrow raiser, you just say, well, they see something in him, and they'll probably turn him into something, and they've earned that benefit of the doubt. Listen, these are things we can all discuss for hours and hours, and maybe we should do it over a pint. We're out of time on the final whistle. Cal, thanks so much for the time. Sporting Kansas City will be back in action with a long run of play against teams in the Eastern Conference. So they've got some time off here, but after that, a big stretch coming up for the Sporting Kansas City team.
Big stretch coming up, and I was speaking to Diego Gutierrez after our television broadcast, and asking him what the benefits are now of having this bye week. And the thing is now is resting your body at the appropriate amount, and Peter Vermees, Kerry Zavagnin, the technical staff will make sure the players do that, but also then after recovery, approaching the game the right way. We all know what Montreal Impact can offer. They've got some significant players in their roster, haven't they? The likes of Marco Odevayo, Felipe, Bernardello as well, the designated player coming in, and of course the recent trade bringing in Jack McInerney as well. I mean, that came out of absolutely nowhere. So plenty of options for Montreal Impact, but plenty of work to do for Sporting KC during the week.
Cal, Andy, thanks for the time, guys.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
That's going to do it for the final whistle. Once again, final score: Real Salt Lake and Sporting Kansas City play to a 0-0 draw in front of a sold-out crowd here at Sporting Park. So long, everybody.